Discover the amazing moment a shy maid surprised the CEO. What happened next changed everything forever. Mary dusted the gleaming wood of the CEO's desk, her heart racing as the sun glinted off the countless trophies of success that adorned the room. Each gleaming surface felt like a reminder of her place in this vast corporate hierarchy, small, unnoticed, a mere maid. But today was different. As her fingers brushed against a stack of documents, a chill raced down her spine. The words, "unethical practices," screamed from the paper, plunging her into a moral abyss. Should she alert someone? Risk her position? With every second that ticked by, her heart thudded, giving weight to her family's teachings on integrity. She had been raised to value honesty, to stand up for others, yet here she was, trapped in a web of fear. What was the right choice? Reveal the truth and possibly shake the foundation of her own safety, or remain silent and watch as her colleagues potentially faced dire consequences? Ambivalence churned inside her. Thoughts twisted like an intricate maze. Jobs were scarce. Her own paycheck barely covered her rent, and exposing the CEO could turn her world upside down. She pressed her palms against the cool desk, breathing deeply to quell the rising anxiety. What if revealing this could help others? A surge of determination flickered within her, mixed with paralyzing fear. The tension between her desires and her fears escalated as she ventured deeper into the discovery. The world beyond this office was a place filled with struggles she understood. Her friends shared similar stories of checking budgets and making ends meet. They weren't just faceless employees, they were vibrant lives, each with aspirations and burdens. Yet, with every glance at the documents, she pictured the cogs of a ruthless corporate machine turning against her, her insecurity swelling as she contemplated the repercussions of her actions. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to make sense of the chaos, she grabbed her phone, fingers trembling as she typed notes about the findings, connecting dots between the information she had and the future she desired. This new avenue of strategic thinking felt exhilarating yet terrifying. It was a danger that could plunge her into an abyss of insecurity. Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Alex, the intern whose idealism seemed to shine bright against their dreary corporate backdrop. Her eyes met his, a silent confession of shared morality exchanged between them. As they began to formulate a plan, each step felt like teetering on a precipice. Doubts clouded Mary's mind. Questions regurgitated endlessly. What if they got caught? What would happen to her? Each conversation they had deepened her crisis, tightening the noose of anxiety around her neck. The stakes in this covert operation grew with every revelation, the implications heavy on her shoulders. The tension reached a fever pitch as all-staff meeting day approached. This was it. This was where everything could change. Mary could feel her heart in her throat as the boldness of her plan materialized. She envisioned standing before the entire office, a battleground of truth and deception waiting for her to unleash her findings. But chaos awaited. The moments flickered like a candle in the wind, her future, her courage, and the lives of her colleagues hung in the balance. The weight of her thoughts nearly crushed her. A decision loomed, one that could redefine her identity forever. And amidst the chaos, she realized she was closer to the edge than she ever imagined. Fingers shaking in anticipation, Mary faced the mirror in the cramped bathroom. Her reflection stared back at her, a blend of vulnerability and newfound resolve. She had spent countless hours cleaning this office, silently observing the dancers of corporate life while feeling like a ghost. But now, the time was approaching when she would step from the shadows into the light, demanding to be seen. The meeting loomed ahead, the conference room filled with the suits and high heels that masked the challenges of the everyday worker. With every tick of the clock, her confidence flickered. Would anyone believe her? Or would they dismiss her as just another employee with no authority? The truth, raw and infectious, was coursing through her veins. Still, doubts crept in, gnawing at her resolve. Maybe her fears were valid, maybe exposing the truth could not only backfire on her but also put her loved ones in danger. Do you really want to do this? Alex's voice echoed in her mind as if he were standing right next to her. He had seemed so assured, urging her to pursue justice for their colleagues, people who trusted the very system that could be harming them. His determination had sparked something in her, but now it felt like a weight pressing down. She had to remember the purpose behind their plans, to protect those who might suffer under the weight of deceptive practices. No more running from what could be instead, it was time to stand tall against what was. She inhaled deeply, recalling her family's values of integrity and courage. They had always challenged her to advocate for what was right, no matter the risk. If her parents could sacrifice for a better tomorrow, surely she could risk a job for the chance to help others. With that thought, Mary adjusted her blazer, hoping it would help fortify her resolve. As she walked toward the conference room, the gleaming lights above felt like the spotlight of her moment. Each step resonated with her heartbeat as she carried a bulging folder of truths tightly against her chest. The cacophony of chatter faded into silence as she reached for the door. This was it. The culmination of every late-night reflection, every debate with herself, pushing her toward clarity. Gathering her courage, she entered the room, where her colleagues sat obliviously. The CEO reclined at the head table, surrounded by his loyal entourage. Mary had always looked up to him, his success had seemed untouchable. But today, she sensed the illusion crumbling like an aged facade. Silence enveloped the room as her presence filled the space. She stood at the front, heart racing, ready to unravel the threads of deceit. Yet, the moment weighed heavy in her chest. Could she hold everyone's attention? Did they care? She set down the folder with a thud, the sound reverberating across the polished floor like a declaration. "Excuse me," she started, the tremor in her voice betraying her calm facade. But a spark of confidence lit her words. She was here with purpose. Her fingers fluttered over the documents inside, skimming past blackened marks and damning evidence. This was her chance to embody the brave ideals she had grown up with. As her voice gained volume, weaving through her story and connecting the dots of hidden truths, she could see eyes widen in shock. Conversations and camaraderie she had thought impossible crystallized around a shared sense of responsibility, yet fear and disbelief loomed too. How far could she push this? But even as the tide seemed to turn in her favor, an unsettling presence at the back of the room snapped her attention. It was Susan, the CFO, immovable and cold, staring icily. Mary recognized that look, the threat of retaliation, the fear of losing control. Mary inhaled deeply, bracing herself as the confrontation brewed. This was not just a meeting, it was the crucible of her transformation. Would she allow that gaze to intimidate her or channel it into an enduring strength? She pressed onward, the stakes growing treacherously high, and she was on the brink of realizing her potential or succumbing to the darkness within the corporate machine. Would she embrace her courage, or would the past hold her captive once more? The battlefield for truth was set, and Mary knew there would be no turning back. Mary's voice rang out, resonating against the walls of the conference room like a battle cry. With every sentence she delivered, the gravity of her words shifted the energy within the room. She painted a picture of corruption disguised as policy, while each detail scraped away at the layers of complacency that had wrapped around her colleagues. The flickering glances exchanged among them revealed shock and concern, but something deeper lay beneath, realization that they had allowed themselves to be complicit in the apathy. Yet, with every swell of courage, the icy stare of Susan sent a chill through her. Mary felt the piercing weight of that gaze, as if Susan could siphon away any strength she possessed. It made her question, momentarily, the validity of her stance. Was she indeed the herald of truth, or merely a misguided employee with little recourse? "Do you even understand the implications of what you're saying?" Susan finally interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. The CFO's words hung ominously, threatening to slice through Mary's resolve. "You're talking about our livelihoods, Mary. You're painting a picture of a nightmare that could ruin us all." Mary faltered for just a heartbeat, the confrontation palpable. This wasn't simply a battle of words, it was a confrontation of identity. She appreciated the stakes, but she had to decide whether she would shrink back or rise to meet them. The memories of the late nights spent grappling with fear and doubt rushed back to her, but instead of sinking into despair, she found clarity in her truth. "You're right, Susan," Mary replied, her tone firming. "But I cannot stand by and watch innocent people suffer while we pretend everything is fine. We can change this if we choose to." A flicker of understanding appeared in the eyes of a few colleagues, igniting a spark in the atmosphere. There stood the operations manager, Dave, nodding slowly, his features showing a hidden resolve building up inside him. If only for a moment, Mary felt solidarity begin to rise. But Susan was not done. She stepped forward, affronted, attempting to undermine the unity forming among the group. "And what of consequences, Mary? You expose this, and it isn't just your job on the line, it's everyone else's too. You'll be the scapegoat, the person they throw to the wolves." Mary's heart raced, her stomach twisted. This was the moment to confront her own fears, the reflection not just of her courage but also of her responsibility. Her grip tightened on the folder, reminding her of the weight of the truths inside the complexities that didn't just concern her but enveloped her colleagues in a labyrinth of manipulation. "I'm not here to play the villain," Mary declared, voice rising amidst the storm. "I'm here because we can't ignore the cost of ignorance any longer." She met Susan's gaze, refusing to flinch. "What's at risk is our integrity. If we allow ourselves to be silenced by fear, what kind of people will we become?" The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the realization settling over the room like the dust of a forgotten truth. Mary's words took root, challenging the status quo that had long dictated their lives. Small murmurs began to ripple through the group, the collective discomfort shifting to contemplation. Her stomach turned with apprehension, but in that moment of uncertainty, clarity surged. This was her pivot point. Voices of her colleagues started to layer over one another, questions emerging, confessions poised to break barriers. Yet, lurking in the shadows was the looming threat of retaliation from higher powers. As the tide shifted, so, too, did the atmosphere in the room. Would her colleagues step forward, willing to bear the consequences? Could her courage ignite in them the same fire that propelled her from the shadows? Mary understood she had just initiated a movement, but she also recognized that with every spark of courage came the potential for backlash. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was an awakening. And as the realization of this new reality sat heavy on her shoulders, a chilling thought flared in her mind: would they stand beside her when the storm truly hit? In that precarious moment, everything hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of what could either be a new dawn or a harrowing descent into chaos. The defining question loomed: what actions would they choose from here? Would bravery triumph, or would the shadows reclaim their hold? Mary sat at her desk, the weight of the conference room still a heavy cloak around her shoulders. The tension remained palpable in the air, as if the room itself held its breath in anticipation, fearful of what might come next. She replayed the scene in her mind: Dave's tentative nod, the flickers of agreement among some of her colleagues. Yet, the chilling uncertainty of Susan's threat gnawed at her. Would any of them rally behind her when the repercussions became real? Focus shifted to the stack of documents on her desk, detailed reports and memos that told a sordid story of misinformation and deceit. Each page contained evidence that contradicted the facade the management had maintained for years. She had uncovered enough to confront the corruption, but as the initial adrenaline wore off, doubt began its cruel ascent. "Am I prepared for this?" she whispered to herself. Ambition had always hummed softly beneath her skin, but now it roared. Each heartbeat drummed a rhythm of courage, compelling her to act. She had sought purpose and clarity for so long. This was it, the moment she had unconsciously craved, yet feared. In the quiet confines of her office, she felt claustrophobic, stifled by the walls she had once deemed safe. Was she really willing to throw herself into the whirlwind that would be the fallout of her decisions? She shuffled through the reports, considering her next move. There was power in knowledge, but alongside it, an undeniable weight of responsibility. Her phone buzzed, an incoming message from Dave, quick and terse, "Meet me at the cafe across the street." A flutter of excitement and anxiety coiled in her stomach. This could be the beginning of a coalition, or simply another conversation that fell flat. As she walked the familiar streets, her mind whirled, calculating the consequences. What if they did speak out? What if they weren't ready? The streets felt like a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside. The vibrant storefronts hummed with life, seeming to mock her inner conflict. Upon entering the cafe, she spotted Dave at a corner table, his brow furrowed in contemplation. He looked up as she approached, anxiety flashing in his eyes. "Mary, I've been thinking," he began, his voice a mere whisper, laden with urgency. "What you said in there, it struck a chord. I'm worried about the repercussions, but I can't shake off the feeling that you're right." Her heart swelled with hope. "You're not alone. I want to gather as many people as we can. If we go forward, we need a united front. It's going to take more than just courage from one person," she urged. "But what if we're met with resistance? What if we lose everything?" He countered, his fears like weights tethering him down. "We already have so much to lose if we stay silent," she countered, feeling a fire ignite in her gut. "We have the chance to do something worthwhile. We might actually be working for the right reason here." His expression shifted, uncertainty giving way to determination. "Okay. But we have to be strategic. We need a plan." A surge of excitement flooded Mary's veins, the challenge invigorating. They brainstormed at that small table, plotting each of their next moves with careful consideration. They discussed reaching out to others who might feel the same. The taste of fear morphed, evolving into anticipation, pushing her to discover talents she hadn't known she possessed: the ability to inspire, to lead. Decisions screamed through her mind, hers intertwining with Dave's. Every word felt like digging deeper into a reservoir of potential she hadn't tapped into before. "Let us reconvene tomorrow," she proposed, jotting down names of potential allies. But as she mentally listed those who might join their cause, thoughts of retaliation danced mockingly through her mind. Mary took the plunge, inhaling deeply, feeling the values she harbored, the integrity she held dear, tugging at her like a wave ready to crash. The storm ahead was inevitable, but this was hers to navigate. With the taste of possibility lingering on her lips and the weight of truth radiating in her heart, she left the cafe, the world taking on a brighter hue. Yet, as much as she felt empowered, doubt whispered in the corners of her mind. Would those who once stood by her remain steadfast? Could they all weather the storm together, or would fear pull them apart when it mattered most? She understood now, the real test lay ahead, and with it, the looming question remained: how far was she truly willing to go to reclaim their lost integrity? The next morning, the sun peeked through the blinds, casting a striped shadow across Mary's cluttered desk. She blinked against the light, the weight of her revelations from the previous day still heavy in her chest. The air felt charged, buzzing with anticipation, and deep within her, a flicker of resolve ignited. Mary had set her alarm earlier, but sleep had come only in fits, punctuated by dreams of confrontation and chaos. Now, as she prepared for the day, she was acutely aware of the choices that lay ahead. Each decision carried the potential for change, crafting a path that could veer towards justice or descend into silence. She chose her outfit carefully, a subtle yet professional ensemble enough to portray authority but not demanding attention. This was not the time for theatrics, this was a moment for determination and strategy. Consolidating herself in front of the bathroom mirror, she practiced the assertiveness she hoped to convey in words. "We can do this. We will do this. At the office, the air felt different. It was thick with unspoken words and sidelong glances, the aftermath of the meeting lingering like a cloud over everyone's heads. She felt the familiarity of the workplace suddenly alien, walls now heavy with unacknowledged truths and fraught alliances. Gathering her colleagues for a meeting always seemed daunting. Today, however, she sensed an uncharacteristic urgency in herself, a readiness to face whatever doubts lay ahead. She decompiled the notes from the previous night's conversation, names, ideas, and strategies. With a deep breath, she sent a quick email to those she considered allies. Can we meet around 2 p.m. to discuss some pressing concerns? That simple act of reaching out felt like cracking open a door that had long been stuck. The response was immediate. "Aren't you afraid?" said Claire, one of her more cautious co-workers, leaning closely to Mary during the brief meeting they managed to squeeze in. "What if Susan finds out?" "Fear is paralyzing," Mary replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "If we allow it to take hold, we'll lose our chance to create a healthier environment here. Actually, we've already lost it." As others filed in, she quickly realized the gathering felt less about confrontation and more like an assembly of shared purpose. Faced with nods of agreement and furrowed brows of concern, she felt momentum building. "People deserve to know the truth," Mary said, her voice growing stronger. "We can't turn a blind eye anymore. It's time we stand for what's right." The discussions grew passionate, frustrations spilling over as more colleagues began sharing their own experiences. This was what Mary craved, a space for collective expression, values being reaffirmed. Each story unveiled layers of broken trust, all stemming back to the central power dynamics that had silenced them for too long. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Susan appeared, flanked by a couple of her loyalists. The air shifted, tension snapping like a taut wire. Mary's heart raced. She'd anticipated this possibility, a part of her mentally preparing ammunition for potential conflict. "Why are you all gathered here?" Susan's gaze was icy, piercing through their bubble of unity. "I hope there's nothing unprofessional happening." In that split second, Mary wrestled with an instinctive urge to retreat, to bury her concerns. But as she glanced around the room and met the resolute faces staring back at her, a decision crystallized. This was not simply about holding Susan accountable, it was about reclaiming their dignity, their integrity. Mary stepped forward, defiance coursing through her veins. "We're just discussing the reports, Susan. The truth needs to come out." A stunned silence followed. The confrontation crackled in the air, a pivotal moment that could shift everything around them. Would they back her, or would hesitation return to poison their resolve? "Are you ready to face the something you've denied for so long?" Mary's voice was steady, the truth hanging between them. As Susan opened her mouth to respond, anticipation built like a tightly coiled spring, ready to whip into action. The stakes had officially risen. The moment teetered, and Mary now understood the real question: would she be able to lead when it mattered most, or would fear return to hem them all in silence? Mary's heart pounded in her chest as the silence enveloped the room. She felt the heat of multiple gazes, eyes filled with disbelief and an inkling of hope. In that moment, the stakes had risen dramatically, and her resolve solidified. She had crossed a line, retreat was not an option now. Susan's lips pressed together in a thin line, as if she were attempting to contain her anger. "This is highly inappropriate," she snapped, trying to regain control of the narrative. Mary stood tall, channeling every ounce of courage she possessed. "No, Susan. What's inappropriate is how we've tolerated this environment for so long." Her words emerged more forceful than she had anticipated, a testament to the confidence she had gradually cultivated. The silence lingered a moment longer, thick with tension, before Claire stepped forward. "We've had enough," she added, her voice trembling but resolute. "We're not afraid anymore." The others murmured assent, emboldened by Claire's declaration. That was the breakthrough Mary needed. It wasn't just her fight, they were in this together. Emboldened by their collective affirmation, she turned her attention back to Susan. I'm not just attacking you personally. This impacts everyone here and the company's future. We have real concerns about the way decisions are being made, Mary clarified, urging her colleagues to remember the issues that had been ignored for far too long. For a fleeting moment, she saw a flicker of recognition in Susan's eyes, but it quickly transformed into defiance. You are crossing a line here. A team that undermines its leader is a team destined for failure, Susan retorted. At that moment, Mary questioned her own fears of repercussion. After all, there had been plenty of fear already, fear of judgment, of retaliation, of the unknown. But if they allowed that fear to grip them now, nothing would change, and the cycle of silence would continue. Let us consider our options here, Susan. We can either work together to address these issues, or you can continue to ignore them at the risk of alienating your entire team, Mary countered, her voice steady now, as if the very words themselves were turning into her armor. The atmosphere shifted, whispers of agreement rippled through the group. This was more than just a stand against one person, it was a declaration to reclaim agency. As tension crackled in the air, Mary felt an electric sense of newfound purpose. She had always viewed herself as a passive player in the workplace dynamics, but now, she was becoming something she never thought she could be, a leader. No longer willing to sidestep conflict, she realized that real leadership required confronting discomfort and recognizing that others shared her sentiments. Maybe it's time we addressed the work culture around here. I believe it can improve if we focus on collaboration rather than intimidation, Mary pressed further, striving to spotlight a path forward. Susan's expression faltered for a split second, uncertainty etched in her features. Encouraged by this slight, Mary raised her voice. We deserve a workplace where everyone's opinions matter, where transparency reigns over fear. If changes aren't made, we'll have no choice but to elevate this issue beyond these walls. A murmur of agreement caused the previously lifeless room to ignite with potential. Mary sensed a shift, a wave of solidarity pushing against the long-held barriers. As she met her colleagues' eyes, she could see their fears morphing into a steely determination. But then, Susan regained her composure, a chilling resolve returning to her demeanor. You think your little rebellion frightens me? The consequences of this will echo far beyond this meeting room. The stakes had escalated once more, foreboding yet energizing. Mary stood at a crossroads, faced with not only the consequences of her stand but also a deeper revelation about her capacity to instigate change. It struck her vividly that this was merely the beginning. They were now at a pivotal junction, and the tension hung palpable in the air. In her heart, Mary realized. She was ready for whatever lay ahead, she would not shy away. As the confrontation maintained its electric atmosphere, ready to explode, Mary took a deep breath and prepared for the next move. Would her newfound courage be enough to dismantle the carefully crafted web of authority, or was she stepping into an even greater storm? Mary's resolve crystallized as the weight of Susan's threat hung in the air like a thick fog. The flicker of uncertainty she had seen in Susan's eyes now felt more like a challenge to be met rather than a warning to retreat. Perhaps it was the collective strength of her colleagues that infused her with newfound vigor, pushing her to shift her focus from just surviving this confrontation to truly redefining the narrative of her workplace. Let us talk about consequences, then, Mary said, locking eyes with Susan in a deliberate act of defiance. I think it's far more dangerous to continue operating in fear and silence. What you call loyalty is really just an insidious form of compliance, and it won't lead us anywhere constructive. The conference room darkened as her words settled in. Mary felt a wave of exhilaration wash over her. This was not merely about a single standoff, it felt monumental. With every syllable, she stumbled upon an inner strength she had only glimpsed before. No longer merely a participant in someone else's game, she was redefining the rules. Every day we don't speak up, we dilute our potential. We become cogs in your well-oiled machine, misplaced and unrecognized, Claire chimed in, her fierce determination echoing Mary's sentiments. Mary could feel the energy shift in the room. This was more than just her voice, it was a choir of unspoken grievances surfacing as each team member shared the fears they had muted for too long. She could see their eyes sparking with defiance, their convictions building one upon another. "Enough!" Susan shouted, but there was a tremor of unease laced with her frustration. "This is insubordination. You have no idea what you're risking here." Mary didn't flinch. The flames of opposition were rising, and she embraced the heat. "What's truly at risk is our integrity and well-being, Susan. The moral fabric of this team is worth more than a stagnant atmosphere ruled by fear." As Mary's voice gained momentum, she was constructing a bridge toward a future that felt transformative. The more eloquent she became, the more she realized how far she had come in just a few moments. The shy, hesitant woman who once played the sidelines was now an advocate, a catalyst for change. Susan's expression tightened, but Mary pressed on, as much for her team's sake as for her own. "It's time we cultivate a culture where transparency and collaboration become our cornerstones, not intimidation. You can wield authority, but you cannot dictate respect. My colleagues deserve a better work environment, as do you. To thrive, we must address the cracks that have run through our organization for too long." The rising tension seemed to crystallize into a palpable energy, one that spoke of upheaval and renewal. Mary's pulse quickened, she was on the threshold of something substantial. Yet as Susan's smile broke into something more sinister, Mary felt the weight of a familiar fear slither back into her mind. Was she truly ready to confront the full extent of the consequences? The stakes of her rebellion might lead her to paths she hadn't anticipated. Could her courage withstand the aftermath of pushing against such rigid authority? "Repercussions will come, Mary. It's naive to think they won't," Susan replied evenly now, almost too calm. "Careful what you wish for." In that instant, the stakes escalated once again. Endless possibilities spun through Mary's mind. What if she ventured too far? What if this moment of courage led her not to victory, but down a darker corridor of repercussions she had yet to foresee? But maybe that's where true growth lived, at the edge of uncertainty, where every step taken was a dance with fear instead of a retreat into the shadows. She took a deep breath, poised for whatever lay ahead, her heart racing with both dread and excitement. With the meeting's tension swirling around her, Mary's newfound leadership was put to the test. What would her transformation mean in the upcoming confrontation with Susan? The time had come to face her deepest fears and redefine her path, whether she would emerge victorious or succumb to the fallout would be revealed in the next moment. The tension in the room crescendoed, an electric silence that made Mary acutely aware of the weight of each heartbeat. She could sense her colleagues shifting in their seats, their eyes darting between her and Susan. The stakes felt monumental, not just for her but for everyone who had kept their heads down. Susan straightened, her posture rigid with a forced confidence that didn't escape Mary's notice. "You think this little rebellion is going to end well for you?" Susan's voice dripped with condescension, a calculated move to reassert her dominance. Yet in that moment, Mary recognized a pivotal opportunity. "My role here isn't limited to just a job," Mary replied, her voice sure but not loud. "It's about influencing a culture that allows everyone to voice their concerns without fear of reprisal. If that's what needs to happen to truly make a change, then so be it." Her own words flowed through her like a revelation. The usual uncertainty she grappled with seemed to dissolve in the face of her own conviction. Maybe the risks associated with her uprising weren't about being silenced, but rather about finding her footing in a world that needed her input more than ever. The room held its breath as Susan leaned forward, shadows pooling under her eyes. "You have no idea what you're stepping into, Mary. Dare I say you might even be isolating yourself from this team?" Mary shook her head, feeling fueled by the belief that she was no longer alone. "No, Susan. I'm uniting us. This isn't isolation, it's solidarity. We're tired of the status quo. It was the first time she could see movement. Some heads nodded, others looked thoughtful. The tide was beginning to shift. "What you're seeing as weakness is an awakening," Claire added, her voice rising in support. "And if we don't speak up now, we'll just be waiting for the next moment of intimidation to shrink back into silence." But as the collaboration ignited her resolve, Mary couldn't ignore the internal conflict that simmered beneath her determination. What if Susan retaliated? What if she lost her job, or worse, hurt her colleagues' prospects? Yet each uncertain thought was punctuated with a stronger realization: she could no longer remain silent, not just for her sake, but for those who needed a voice. With every word exchanged, the conference room felt less like a battleground and more like an arena of growth. Mary recalled her early days at the company, days when her voice trembled and her ideas were couched in self-doubt. Considering how much she transformed just by stepping into the spotlight, she felt an exhilarating rush. "Welcome to the real world," Susan snapped at last, her composure trembling slightly. "Real consequences and real risks come with such bravado. There are repercussions for this kind of defiance." Mary stood tall, feeling the gravity of the moment settle over her. "And yet, real change is born from defiance. I refuse to back down." In that pivotal moment, Mary discovered not just the power of her voice, but the depth of her courage. She understood that it was her vulnerability that connected her to her colleagues, and, paradoxically, that very vulnerability fortified her resolve. The unity in the room resonated, transforming fear into a rallying cry for change. The confrontation was still far from over, and Mary braced herself for whatever storm was on the horizon. As discussions heated, deep down she understood the relentless echo of Susan's warning would not dissipate swiftly. Navigating this newfound path would require not just bravery, but a strategic approach to dismantling the old structures that governed her workplace. The meeting concluded, leaving Mary with an unsettling but necessary decision looming overhead. Would she stand her ground against Susan, risking everything she had worked for? Would she fully embrace her role as a leader of change? As whispers of action filled the air, one thought clung to Mary's mind: was she prepared to navigate this turbulent journey toward change, come what may? Or would the weight of fear still hold her captive, even amid the rising tide of support? The path ahead stretched dauntingly, filled with uncertainties, but it also shimmered with promises yet to unfold. The next chapter was unwritten, and Mary stood at its precipice, poised between the familiar safe ground of compliance and a courageous leap into the unknown. Would she risk it all or retreat back into the shadows? The answer awaited her in the echo of her decisions. Mary stepped out of the conference room, her mind thrumming with the aftermath of her confrontation with Susan. In the fluorescent lighting of the corridor, every moment from the meeting replayed in vivid detail. The nervous anticipation of her colleagues, the flicker of doubt in Susan's eyes, and most importantly, the fiery resolve within herself didn't feel like a fleeting rush anymore, it had cemented a foundation. What Mary initially perceived as an unsolvable dilemma now morphed into an extraordinary opportunity for both growth and leadership. Her feet moved almost automatically, leading her toward her desk, but her thoughts were already racing ahead. This was the moment she needed to harness for change, not just for herself, but for everyone else who felt stuck in the same stifling silence. She sat at her desk, but the familiar clutter did nothing to ease the surge of adrenaline coursing through her. Around her, the office buzzed with regularity. Colleagues shuffled past, engaged in their routines, oblivious to the change brewing just under the surface. Mary could feel it thrumming, waiting to bubble over. It was a test of her authentic self now to maneuver through this sea of monotony and spark genuine dialogue. Her instincts kicked into overdrive. What was her next step? She needed a strategy, something focused and actionable. The discussions from earlier had shown her that unity was possible, but it wouldn't solidify unless she took the reins. It meant gathering the team, organizing a roundtable where they could openly discuss their concerns without fear, just as she had dared to do. Mary pulled out a notepad and began jotting down her ideas. "Open forum," she wrote in bold letters. It sounded straightforward enough, yet she knew its implementation would be anything but simple. She pictured the faces of her colleagues, their hesitations and unspoken fears would need careful navigation. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A message from Claire appeared, "Really proud of you today. We need to talk about next steps." It was the encouragement she needed, but it also made her heart race. They were entering the deep end together, and there was no turning back now. Mary pondered Claire's words, knowing they had to build momentum quickly before Susan could regain control. Inspiration struck her. They would need an anonymous platform for colleagues to voice their concerns without fear of repercussions. Worded nicely but assertively in a way that made it clear that silence wasn't an option anymore. As she typed up a rough draft for an email to Claire, Mary felt her spirits elevate. Could she truly reshape the narrative within her team? She recalled the fear she felt before speaking out, the deafening silence that often followed a bold move. But if she could inspire even one person to recognize their own power, the ripple effect would change everything. After sending the email to Claire, she glanced around the office, contemplating who else might join her cause. She had to tread carefully, allies could still be scarce. Each decision needed to be deliberate. Identifying supporters was essential, as was ensuring that the approach was constructive rather than combative. A shadow crossed her desk. Mary looked up to see Jason, a quiet coworker who typically kept to himself. He hesitated, glancing back at the conference room before engaging in conversation. "Hey, Mary. I just wanted to say what you did today. It's refreshing. It's about time someone said something." The compliment lingered uncomfortably in the air. It was validation, yet it came with its own weight, the burden of expectation. "Thank you, Jason. I hope you'll join us. Things need to change, and I think we can do this together." He nodded, resolve sparking behind his eyes. "Count me in." With that simple agreement, Mary felt the seeds of a movement begin to take root. Yet the challenges loomed larger than just organizing. There was Susan, the looming shadow of retaliation, and the risk of leaving her comfort zone. As the day wore on, Mary's determination heightened. Each second felt like an echo reverberating with the potential for transformation that hinged on her capacity to lead. The enormity of her choice settled in. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. With her fingers poised over the keyboard, she took a deep breath. The moment was ripe for action, but the question lurked: how would Susan strike back, and were they truly prepared to face her retaliatory schemes? The next steps needed to be precise, aimed straight for the heart of resistance. Mary steeled herself for the unraveling storm. Change was never easy, but she would embrace it, armored in her resolve. Would her courage ignite a fire that could not be extinguished, or would the looming specter of confrontation with Susan force her back into the shadows? Only time would reveal the answer. The day had unfolded into one of unexpected resolution. Mary sat at her desk, reflecting on the whirlwind of events that led her to this pivotal moment. The conference room confrontation with Susan had proven to be a transformative experience. Each heartbeat resonated with the strength of her newfound confidence, a stark contrast to the timid Maid who had once felt like a mere shadow in this corporate structure. She glanced around the office. The subdued atmosphere felt alive with unspoken potential. Conversations bubbled awkwardly but sincerely, as colleagues gathered in small clusters, exchanging knowing glances. Mary had ignited a spark. People were willing to come together, and the fear of retaliation began to transform into courage. The email campaign she initiated soliciting anonymous concerns had taken off. Within hours, responses flooded in, a testament that others shared the same frustrations she had long suppressed. As colleagues expressed their feelings of disenfranchisement, Mary's resolve crystallized. Sharing these stories would usher in a pivotal shift in workplace culture. In the midst of the buzz, Mary received another message, this time from Claire: "The team is excited. Let us meet to discuss moving forward with the open forum. There's strength in numbers." The excitement emanating from her screen surged through Mary, propelling her from contemplation into action. At the short meeting that followed, Mary found herself at the helm, embodying the leadership role she'd fought so hard to accept. In the circle of supportive faces, she laid out strategies for the open forum, sharing the unique experiences that had motivated her to step into the light. Each colleague's story contributed to a shared narrative of resilience and the necessity for change. "The aim is not to rip apart our company but to strengthen it," she told them. "We possess the power to take back our integrity and make our workplace environment supportive, thriving, and transparent. We owe it to ourselves." There were nods, murmurs of agreement, and the quiet solidarity of shoulders straightening as the realization dawned that they were not alone in their struggles. Mary could feel the ideological shift. Their hope was tangible. Just as Susan had spun her web of control, it became clear that Mary and her colleagues were now crafting a web of unity. "Think about the impact we can have," she encouraged. "This isn't just about us, it's about changing the landscape for everyone who follows in our footsteps." The next few days unfolded with a frenzy of preparation. The open forum scheduled for next week was being tailored meticulously. Flyers with the event details adorned the walls, hopeful slogans began popping up in common areas. The air crackled with energy and determination. As they organized, the haunting echo of Susan's threats began to lose its ferocity. Yet shadows remained. Mary understood that the real challenge loomed ahead. Susan was bound to retaliate, driven by her desire to maintain control. Mary braced herself, acknowledging the risks but knowing she could no longer be silenced. Their courage would indeed prompt a response, but she had transformed her fear into anticipation, ready to face the fallout. With the day of the open forum upon them, Mary entered the conference room to find it filled beyond capacity. Colleagues filled every inch of the space, a sea of faces eager for the dialogue they had yearned for. This was not merely a meeting, it was a statement of their collective resolve. Mary could feel the pulse of the room, the same wave of anxious anticipation surging through everyone present. As she stood at the front, her heart raced, but it was a thrilling mix not of dread, but of empowerment. This was her moment to advocate for change, to embrace her new identity with authority. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we talk not just as a workplace but as individuals seeking integrity and voice," she began, her voice echoing with conviction. "We are here to reclaim our power and address the culture we live in." The discussion flowed like a river. Unchained honest accounts of struggles, pressing concerns, and dreams of a better workplace poured forth. As she facilitated the dialogue with poise, her colleagues began to draw strength from one another, weaving a tapestry of change that only solidified their collective mission. Then, as she expected, the door swung open, and Susan strode in, flanked by her loyalists. A hush fell over the room, tension slicing through the air like a knife. Mary met her eyes with unyielding resolve. She wouldn't shy away this time. Susan attempted to deride their efforts, branding the forum as an act of insubordination, but Mary found her voice louder than the CFO's disdain. "This is not insubordination, this is empowerment. We have the right to demand transparency and accountability." As Mary's words cut through the silence, resistance folded in on itself. Colleagues stood in solidarity alongside her, expressing their concerns, frustrations, and shared hopes, backing her in unwavering loyalty. In that pivotal moment, Mary realized she had not only stepped out of the shadows but had also fostered an environment ripe for genuine collaboration. She had transformed from a shy maid into a recognized leader advocating for change. Her journey had not solely served her growth but had sparked a fire of empowerment amongst her peers, turning them into advocates for one another and for their own aspirations. The open forum concluded with a newfound sense of community and strength emanating from within the organization. People left the room with renewed purpose, their voices blending together in a chorus of change, every individual resolved to cultivate a healthier workplace environment, free from fear. Finally, as Mary stood alone in the now empty conference room, a wave of satisfaction washed over her. She had chosen to embrace integrity over silence, cultivating an indomitable spirit within herself and inspiring others to do the same. The fear that once rooted her in hesitant silence had now transformed into unfaltering confidence. Mary had conquered not just the moment, but also reintegrated her sense of self into the very fabric of the organization. Her triumph was not just in the changes she helped inspire but in the newfound respect she now commanded, proving that even the quietest voices could alter the course of the mighty corporate machine. She achieved personal and professional fulfillment, stepping solidly into her established position as a beacon of hope for others. Now was the moment for the world to take notice. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.